I am one of two programming coordinators at Xpace Cultural Centre. Xpace is proud to be co-presenting Why DIY When You Can Do It Together with Gendai, the Center for Emerging Artists and Designers, BAM Collective, and T-Base. So a bit about us. Xpace Cultural Centre is a not-for-profit, artist-run center dedicated to providing emerging and student artists, designers, and curators, as well as writers, with opportunities to showcase their work. We are currently closed to the public, but we have several online programmings happening now and in the future. We'll also be releasing an annual open call for emerging artists and students at the end of the month, so be sure to look out for that. And we currently have an ongoing open call for designers, writers, poster designers, and workshop facilitators with an ongoing deadline. We are also constantly hosting free workshops and events, so please check us out at xspace.info, as well as our Facebook page at Xpace Cultural Centre. And yes, thank you so much, and I will now throw it over to Philip to do a land acknowledgement for us.
Thanks, Ed. So I'm sure that every collective must have their own land acknowledgement. I'll be reading out Xpace's, though I do feel like it encapsulates how generally we all want to talk about our relationships to this land. Also, just a heads up, it's a bit long, but I do think that land acknowledgements do warrant this kind of time spent actually talking about this. We never want it to feel like something that we're just haphazardly saying. So yeah, though we're all in different spaces right now, we would like to acknowledge the Indigenous land on which our space operates on, written collectively by Xpace. We wish for this land acknowledgement to function as an understanding of the land and our relationship to it, as individual arts practitioners / cultural workers living and working in Takaranto, as well as I guess in this context, the collective entity that constitutes Xpace. This sacred land has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years, serving as the home of indigenous people and nations long before the colonial project. These are the original territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, and the Métis Nation. This territory exists in connection to the One Dish, One Spoon Wampum Belt, which is a peace treaty and mutual agreement established between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to care for the land and the precious resources around the Great Lakes. The dish representing the land itself and the spoon representing responsibility in sharing its resources. Never taking more than you need and sharing with others. We must continue to uphold this treaty, both as Indigenous folks and non-Indigenous / settler folks, as it addresses all of our relationships and relations. For us, this treaty informs our intention to support artists who exist on the margins through public programming and the sharing of additional resources for arts practitioners. We want to encourage a sharing of knowledge, hospitality, and opportunity, our fellow peers across the vibrant arts community that has since developed here. And we stand in solidarity with the Indigenous communities against the violent forces and effects of colonialism. We wish for this land acknowledgement to also function as a call to action, dismantling systemic racism and white supremacy within institutions and systems we exist within, as well as continuing to fight for Indigenous sovereignty, rights, and stewardship of the land are just a few of the many forms in which support can take. We seek to use the resources available to us as an arts institution in order to work towards these goals within our projects and programming. And as we see land acknowledgements rapidly become automated and co-opted by institutions, we recognize the inherent failure of and in the limits of the land acknowledgement itself, but despite its intrinsic failings. In still including it, we would like to honor the land acknowledgement as something that is alive and ever shifting, unable to be completed. So it's an endless process of change as we commit to always be reflecting, responding, and learning about what it means to live and work on stolen land. We always encourage thinking about this land and your relationship to it. For me, as an individual, I'm part of the Filipino diaspora. My parents immigrated to Canada in 1989. And although we've called Toronto our home for a really long time, I think it's been a process to kind of unweave the fact that despite the strong links that immigrants have to the places that they move to, starting fresh, starting new, growing family from the ground up. It's still rooted in a lot of like ideas and, violence in terms of like also being a settler. So for me personally, that's also something that I'm trying to think about a lot, and it kind of informs the way that I function as an artist and a staff member here at Xpace. So I think that, thinking about your own personal relationship to the land and how complex it is will only, just ensure that you're thinking responsibly and consciously about, the way you're moving through the world that we live in. So also additionally, I'd like to say that I think what's so great about Toronto and beyond is that all of us are working within different collectives. In addition to working at Xpace Cultural Centre, I'm also one of the founding co-directors of Hearth. So, constantly switching hats is tricky but fun. And I'd also like to acknowledge that like all of us, we're doing a lot within our jobs and in our separate collectives, either paid work or passion projects. So yeah, that's kind of it for me. I guess I'll stop talking and just hand it off to Petrina and Marsya. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for Xpace and Seed for inviting us to share what we've been learning the past year or so as part of Gendai MA MBA. Gendai MA MBA is Mastering the Art of Misguided Business Administration, and you'll hear about it later on. But yeah, I'm Marsya. Really nice to see you all here. And I wanted to, say a little bit about like the structure of today's conversation is we're gonna start with origin stories. We're gonna talk to BAM and we're gonna talk to T-Base. Florence is here representing T-Base and Hanen is here representing BAM. Books, Art, Music Collective. We're going to talk about origin stories as a way of introducing ourselves. We're going to talk about like what are the conditions that brought us together, the context that we're responding to, how do we find each other, and how does it connect to what we were doing in school? How did the context of being a student helpful or hindering this collective ways of working? And then we're going to talk about why do it together and how do we do it together? And we'll open it up to questions and answers and discussion at the end. So yeah. So let's start with origin stories, as mentioned. Again, the questions are, what are the conditions that brought you to do something together and the context you are responding to? I'll start as part of Gendai, and Petrina, please chime in if I miss anything. Gendai technically started in 2000 to support arts workers, arts practices from the perspectives of Asian diaspora. And then in late 2019, like 19 years later, the collective did an incredible act of succession planning by having an open call for a takeover. So Petrina and I applied with the idea to organize a platform for a contemporary collective of collectives with a majority BIPOC membership. The idea is that as collective of collectives, we gather to share resources and rethink organizational practices. And this is an idea that we got from other collectives, particularly Good School Ecosystem in Jakarta. So just to say that this is not in a vacuum. And the context we're responding to is how we've been working in the arts for a number of years now, and what we've noticed is that despite a significant rise in programming and institutional mandates that purport commitments to decolonization, inclusion, and care, We noticed that exploitative and discriminatory labor practices continue to proliferate in the sector. So what we want to learn, or we want to do in this collective of collectives, is to unlearn and to co-learn these practices, specifically by centering BIPOC voices and experiences.
So MA MBA first started by gathering collectives and thinking through what are some of the shared challenges that collectives face, and what are some of the kinds of trainings and mentorships that institutional workers get as part of their jobs, but DIY workers rarely have access to. And so that's how we collectively designed a syllabus that in its first year is a series of workshops that tackle things like financial literacy and governance, and trying to understand like how institutions do it, but also how collectives can maybe do it better or more equitably. So that's really, this is Gendai's first project. Marsya and I have been at it for about a year. And yeah, we are excited to bring here 2 of the 8 collectives that form part of the first MA MBA cohort, T-Base and BAM. And I think that's enough from us. I think maybe we'll hear from Florence next about how T-Base and all of the other collectives that Florence is a part of as well got started.
Thank you, Petrina. As part of T-Base, I wasn't one of the original co-founding members, but I'm currently the co-director. And similar in a story to Gendai, we did not come out from a vacuum. So the 3 folks that kind of brought the concept of T-Base together were already working with other folks at 187 Augusta, with Kapisanan, and they were very already in tune with the local community. In fact, they had a radio show called Support Your Local Collective. And then we found the space in the Chinatown Center, our physical unit, through the Angry Asian Feminist Gang, who had a booth there during the Toronto Art Book Fair. So there's always this whole ecosystem that has allowed us to find each other. And I think that's why the importance of collectives and collectives of collectives like Gendai are so crucial in continuing what we're doing. And what kind of conditions brought us together? I mean, specifically T-Base at the time, and still does, I think, try to fill a gap in, one, physical space. I think physical space was one of the very few, was a very big privilege in having, especially in downtown Toronto at the center of Chinatown. And that kind of place for people to just casually have meetings was how I made many other collectives with other folks too, and collaborations. And also just seeing this lack of youth-led, grassroots, queer-led spaces that are safer and more anti-oppressive in the ethos of like Asian organizations, which sometimes tend to focus more on, I guess, like the national narrative of like hard work and building up citizenship. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now. Hanen, would you like to continue?
Oh no, I think we lost Hanen. Oh no, you're here.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. I'm sorry, I have some technical issues today, but you know, you can't pass 2020-21 without some technical issues. But thanks so much for opening this conversation and for bringing us to speak about collectives, because I see power when it comes to collectives. My name is Hanen, and I am currently directing the BAM Collective. BAM stands for Books, Art, and Music. And it has been an incredible experience for us to come together and work for an important mission in Ontario and now in New York City. And the conditions that brought us together, it's back in 2018, where Hanen, who is of the collective, a legally blind photographer and an amazing person who is super active in policy and youth issues, came together. So we sat in a coffee shop and we were talking about the gaps that we're seeing in Ontario. As someone myself is interested in policy, and Hanen also at that time was a former, an active member of the Prime Minister Youth Council. We're seeing gaps when it comes to engaging youth in Ontario, and specifically equity-seeking individuals. So newcomers, refugees, LGBT communities, Indigenous and Black. And the gaps that we noticed are when we are off the table when it comes to decision-making for communities and to hear our voice. And two, we have less resources when it comes to sharing resources and giving us opportunities. So we knew that we can bridge the gap because we come from different experiences and backgrounds, and both of us came recently to Toronto. We were we came under the government support program that was launched in 2016 to welcome Syrian refugees, and we wanted to learn more about the systems and give back to the community. So Hanen and I thought that by coming together and by using our passion, which is community support and bridging the gap for folks, we can make an impact, and we did. And the discussion was, what can we find something in common that could be used to bridge the gap? And the only answer we found, it was art and creativity, because we definitely believe art is a universal language that can bring people together and that can support these people. And we did. So in 2019, we decided to host our first event and launch BAM. It took us like a year to be able just to discuss how we want to work together and reach out to other members to see if there is an interest. And we were able to bring other folks joining the collective. We launched our first event back in 2019 before the Canadian election, and we called it Politics and Art. What we did, we invited an nonpartisan organization, and we brought youth to the table to learn about voting and election and get more involved while enjoying some diverse forms of art, from Arabic to English to we had also Indian music. So it was very diverse. People loved it. We had a sold event. And after a week of the event, I received a call from one of the participants saying that she voted for the first time in her life, and we knew we made an impact. So we wanted to continue the work, and we've been responding to a lot of issues that is affecting young folks in Ontario. We're bridging the gap, and we're launching many projects. And of course, there are a lot of challenges, and we will talk more about these challenges later. Thank you.
That's really great to hear. Thank you both. I'm wondering if we can go also a little bit more about what was it like to start a collective within while you're still a student, or within an educational, the structure of an educational institution. How is that like?
Do you want to go first, Florence?
Oh, you go ahead.
Sure. For us, I guess we were discussing this earlier, and it's the institutions themselves. Like for us, we all study at university, or some of us are at high school, and we found the gap also at institutions where we're not encouraged to work collectively when it comes to assignments, for example. Not only from an artistic perspective, but also I study political science, so when it comes to also working on policy. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to experience working collectively as students, but outside, for example, the university, like we're not operating at a university now. So we came together, and there were challenges and good sides of being a student. So the good sides of being a student, I guess, you have opportunities to learn and grow, because most of the time you'll have that, I call it excuse, which is like, we're young, we're learning, it's okay, like don't judge. So it's just a good way for you to always give that excuse, because it's okay to learn at that age. And I think it's also important for you to find ways to work and apply what you're learning at university, because, or at your school, because I find whenever we're studying at university, we're not really doing the work it's not a practical work. So we wanted to try it as working collectively and find if it worked, and it worked perfectly, because we're learning so much from each other's, and we are together overcoming the challenges that we face. The challenges that we faced as a student-led group, it was definitely time and commitment, because the majority of us are full-time students or working and studying at the same time. So BAM is like our baby on the side, that everyone takes care of BAM whenever there is time, but we all believe in the mission, so everyone has commitment for BAM. But I think it's a little bit hard to find time to manage an entire collective and work with a lot of people while you're doing your school and work on the side. But we're trying, like, again, we're students, we're learning, and we're trying, and we are like hoping now to get our registration status by the end of 2021 or early 2022, at least to hire the students that are working with us to be able to financially be dependent, and then do the work that they're doing and focus. And I think also it affects in terms of when I'm talking about the time, for example, it's April now, it's exams months for university students, and we had to pause our programming, especially the launching of the program, until May or June, because everyone is busy, and definitely we need to give time. We're very flexible. So that's the challenge that I see when it comes to students led. And over to you, Florence.
Thank you, Hanen. I think I have many of the same challenges to report, but I mean, I joined T-Base when I was still a student at OCAD, and there, as for like the positive parts, I see school as a really large, huge, long-term workshop. Like everyone around you is sharing so much time, so much space, and you're all like trauma bonded into like the same, for the same like 3, 4, 5 years. And I think that is something that you won't really find outside of school. It's so hard to be able to have the same density of people to meet and to kind of, I guess, like fool around with sometimes, as you were saying, of like making mistakes, doing silly things. And I think taking advantage of a lot of that funding that schools give. I was a graduate student, and so but even as an undergrad, like you still have access to the CAED, and we had a lot of help from both just like open calls that they shared, other grant opportunities. And one of our like core members right now, Christy Carriere, was actually a internship formed between the CAED and T-Base when Shelley Zhang helped us to introduce a lot of folks. Well, Shelley even introduced me to T-Base, really. And so we have, again, this like larger network of people. As like, if you're aware of things, I think that school is a great place to milk every opportunity you think you might have in like paying attention to others and listening and learning. Of course, like time was really not helpful in like being in school and doing collective work. I formed a collective with people one of them was my roommate at the time, and then the other person was someone I just visited so often that we just ended up making a project all of a sudden. But the Hanya, who ran most of the physical space, like time slots for the first year or two of T-Base, was the only person who didn't have school. And so it definitely was really thanks to their flexibility, and otherwise, like, it would be so difficult to kind of organize all that programming, have a space, and also, you know, tend to it, care for yourself at the same time. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. So our next question is, why do it together? So we want to know what attracted you to working collectively, and what have you learned from working together? What works? What's difficult? And what do you get out of working together with your collective that you wouldn't have otherwise found elsewhere? Maybe Florence, we'll start with you.
Personally, it was just much more hopeful to be working with other people. I think I have a penchant towards like pessimism and perhaps like getting stuck. And one of the most difficult things I found about being an artist in the pandemic is that your echo chamber is so small now that I feel like artists also have a lot of like doubt, and that's what makes most artists like very like strong critical thinkers, but that without other people it kind of becomes like overloaded. And so I think other folks give me yeah, just like so much hope in what their visions for the future are, and it gets me excited, it inspires me, and of course, like when you have other people around you, you have other resources, you have many more skill sets that you can share with each other, learn. And the most important thing I would say I've learned from working in collectives, and especially at T-Base, is like how to set very strong boundaries for myself. I think I listened to an artist talk from Deanna Bowen a year or two ago, and she was talking about how when you work at artist-run centers, they have this unspoken generosity clause that, you know, your time, your effort is meant to be generous because you're doing it for like artist-run centers who are generally good causes, or other places that most of our collectives see as good causes. But that, you know, that isn't part of your labor. And if, you know what your body and your mind can do, that you have to really put limits on what you are going to do if you want to be sustainable. And it's not to do everything all the time, but to do like 2-3 things really well. And I did not fully like know that and grasp that until I burnt out like 3 times. I mean, I had always burnt out through school, but that was just me. But then when I burnt out in a collective, it really taught me how to like trust myself to tell people, both when they are, harming me and when I'm harming them. And so like I've kind of developed this like collective relationship hygiene that I've started like doing in my other collectives, of like asking people like, what does it look like when you're stressed? Like, how do you like being supported? What should I do if I need something from you? Like, what kind of tasks do you prefer? What kind of platforms do you like to communicate on? Like, what else is happening in your life? Who should I ask in like your support circle if I need something? Who keeps you accountable? And like, I think it's really helpful in like big projects when you have so many other voices, like knowing what are other people's most like non-negotiable aspects and values of this project, and like how important it is to them, so that we're kind of all on the same page. And yeah, just like being upfront with how you're feeling, I guess. I think a lot of like collectives have check-in moments, but they're usually like, yeah, I'm feeling okay, I'm tired. Like, I am tired, I'm tired all the time, but I don't think that like really gives you, an actual look into what's happening. Just like how I think land acknowledgements have become quite robotic, that I think we should go back to like looking into how check-ins can be more authentic, but also, you know, not like splurging your entire body and soul into it, but being honest. Yeah, that was a lot.
I echo a lot of what you said, Florence. Like having the space to come to the team, share ideas and perspectives is very powerful. But while working at a collective, to start with, I think for me, I was attracted to work for a collective, and for me, I'm a person who likes to work, like try new things every day. So, for example, like I'm studying governance and policy and political science, and I worked for non-for-profit, and then I changed work for companies, and then I worked for private sectors, and now I work for government. And there was a missing part for me, which is working for a collective, and just to see how would it be to work together. And when Hani and I started the collective, we can't imagine the amount of this encouragement that came from some of members of the community. A lot of people didn't believe in us, and a lot of people said we cannot work together, and a lot of people didn't see power in working collectively for a small mission or even like a longer term mission. But we wanted to take working collectively as a challenge and to learn and grow. And BAM still to us a challenge, and we're still learning by just coming together and sharing ideas and perspectives. I learned a lot while working in the team. We've been operating for almost now 3 years. And I would say my main two takeaway from working collectively, number one, learning how to say no. And learning how to say no is, you know, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of like, you need to be ready to say no. And that's something we face on a personal level with our loved ones and friends and coworkers. So when I started to work collectively, not only me, but also the team members started to like develop those skills, and everyone was able to say no with a very open heart, and just say no whenever they can't support or they can't help in any way. And I think it's important to learn how to say no, especially like now we're learning and growing, and that's something I'm say it. So I'm grateful that the collective gave me the opportunity to be able to say no. And two, I think that's also a learning experience. Learn how to listen, listening to others and listening to ideas and listening to other people that are different than you. That was an important lesson to me that I learned. And while I was working for a not-for-profit, and I worked for like big companies, and most of the time there is an idea, and this idea is given to you, and then your job is to do the task. You're not most of the time heard, or you're not having an opportunity to be. And I didn't like that structure. So I wanted to try working collectively, and it worked out. We listened to each other, everyone always ready to listen and to learn. So that's something I really appreciate from the collective, especially at this age. I'm now turning 23, and I'm learning those skills. I really appreciate it, and I really think this will help me in the future for my future careers, not only but while working at the collective. And lastly is the space that we built together, the safe space that we have, and I call it also a brave space where everyone come to this space, not only when they want to share their success and their stories and ideas, but also when they have fear and when they are discouraged and when they want just to talk to someone about their fear and about the challenges that they face. Everyone, again, like see BAM as the space that they come to whenever there is a need to speak out and whenever there is a need to listen to people. And this is not only for our team members. We were able to build this trust with our target audience. And whenever we're hosting an event or when launching a project, even virtually, we offer the networking time, like half an hour, 10 minutes, as much as we can. We call it an informal space. We always have a mental health support, a person who can support when needed. And we open the floor for people to share ideas, to share their perspectives on our work, but also to give us their ideas, and we want to add them to our work. So we want them to implement the project with us, and also to answer their questions and give them a space to connect and make friends. So it's just so great to see in 3 years we were able to build the space, and we're learning every day.
Oh yeah, thank you, Hanen. And I would like to add that you could say no, and you could also say not now. Like, it doesn't have to be always immediate. And especially now that, I've learned through the pandemic that delays happen, and it doesn't have to happen on the same timeline as was initially imagined, but that it'll happen at some point. And that, my God, I just heard you're 23. Like, we're all so young. We're all so young.
Okay. You see the power coming together and working. Like, I don't even think about the age. We're making an impact. That's what I know.
That's so amazing. I'm gonna have to like go back to this recording and go through like Florence's list of questions on like how to make check-ins more authentic. But also, yeah, Hanen, that was a really good point about like this space of sharing not just ideas but also fears. And I want to learn more. How do you actually facilitate that? How would you describe the space that you hold together and for one another? And how does the sharing of ideas, dreams, fears, as you said, and also like discomforts can happen within this space? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I wish I have Jenna Robert. She's an Indigenous member in our team, and she's an artist and amazing community leader. Jenna in our team is the person who facilitates these, and we don't organize, for example, to facilitate this during sessions. It just comes whenever we're having a meeting or we're stressed about a deadline or an event. Always Jenna comes to ask us that question, which is, how are you feeling? Like, I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate what you're doing and you are making an impact every day. So she's a great reminder to us, and I'm really grateful to have her in the team because she's just an awesome person to be in the space to remind everyone. Also a health coach, so she always reminds us to also take care of our health and our mental health. But I would say for our team, I think, again, it comes also within your team members. Everyone is brave. Trust between each other, and the ability of the collective is what made them feel comfort coming and working and sharing the fears and the good moments that they're having, not only when they're working with us but also in their personal lives. During our meetings, we have some time to just talk about how we feel in general. And whenever there is a concern, this concern is raised with an open heart. And I think that takes also a lot of courage, like saying no. Sharing a concern is not always like, especially if you're not in a welcoming environment. Saying a no or sharing a concern could be challenging. But for us, we're always listening. We're always giving time for each member of the collective to talk about the concern and tell us how we can work on it. And something I tell people, and most of the time people don't believe it, but we've been working together for 3 years and we had no conflict. And again, I'm still amazed with that, but also we're learning. Because when we're going to these workshops and we're working and connecting with other folks from other collectives, we're learning from their experiences. And when we come, we also exchange this information. So we're learning so much, and we're very open to learn. And I'm pretty sure everyone in our collective is very grateful for the space. And this space is not only, again, for our team members, but also for the people that we work with and our advisory board, because we're currently working with 11 advisory board, a big number. It's not a small number. Again, people from diverse cultures and perspectives and ideas, but when we come to one space, everyone feels so welcomed and so supported. And when I recruited the board members, I noticed they felt the space, because when they signed an agreement to meet only once in 6 months with us, and then their work is remotely over email or phone calls. And I received feedback, and the feedback was, we want to meet. They needed the space, like they wanted to see each other and come and work in one space, even virtually. And we did it, and we hosted like 2-3 meetings, and it was amazing just to see people coming together and working. And whenever we're sharing updates in those meetings, you'll see everyone is jumping. I can help, I can support. Do you need me to say this? And do you want me to do this? So it's just so awesome. Like, we build a space for each other, especially now virtually, and it's going awesome.
basing, and how does it work for T-base, Florence?
Our structure changed a lot in the last year, especially because we've actually just incorporated into a nonprofit. And so, actually, sorry, a nonprofit co-op. The co-op part is, I haven't read the bylaws yet, so I don't actually know what exactly like our structure is, but it's basically it's based on the fact that we have a membership, like we have a like tiered membership, quite like Patreon, but for collectives we use with friends, and we have an interim board right now. We are looking to have like a permanent board once we are fully established. But we started with like very informal meetings. Like when we were in the space, we would just talk to each other, hey, what's happening in the programming? But it was a lot thanks to Henya, who was like doing a lot of the early work, that got set up, and now we have like larger staff meetings. But when we say staff, we're pretty much all volunteers, and so we get paid like a pretty small honorarium. But yeah, hopefully with like the larger amount of grants that we're getting, we can become more sustainable soon. But it is a very, very, very DIY institution. And we're thinking mostly right now of like, I'm glad we've slowed down a lot, and the pandemic has, been, 99% terrible, and the 1% is that it's shown us like what is essential, and that's taking care of each other, collaborating, having other partnerships. We've been doing a lot of work with right now CFTO, the community fridges, and we managed to open one near the Chinatown Center on Spadina and Darcy. Please feel free to go take what you need and leave what you can. And working with FOCT, helping their efforts out. And like nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of direct action that needs to be happening. And so that's what we've been focusing on. And we want to think more about mentorship. And I think for me, mentorship has been the one most impactful thing that has really, I guess, been like materially and like mentally helpful in my career. Just the like people who, mostly informal mentorships, just a lot of a faculty of color, like usually the one and only faculty of color in my universities, that just is like, okay, well, I guess I should be doing this work. And, it's sad that they have to take on the burden of this whole thing. But that is, like, I guess, something I would like to see changed. So yeah, it's been really helpful to see that idea of mentorship also inside our collective, and we're going to launch also our own mentorship program soonish. Actually, really not soonish. Like we're hoping to get it in person, so we might wait out the lockdown. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'm hearing that like thinking about this essential thing and starting from there, like the taking care of one another is and how that manifests in like direct action, but also like everyday practice is really key to nurturing a space that is open and supportive. Thank you so much, you both. Our next question is, well, you touched on this already, so I really want to expand on it too. Can you talk a little bit more about this role of mentorship, and what did it look like, and what ways do you receive or offer mentorship in ways that have been meaningful?
Oh, sorry, was that for me?
Both. Who wants it?
I feel like I just spoke a little bit about it, so I might want to give Hanen the first word.
Sure. For us, like the mentorship, I guess, is a little bit different because for us, what we do, we always reach out to the people that we work with when it comes to mentorship. For example, when we wanted to establish the advisory board, it was a big decision to make. I came with the idea to my team because, again, being a student-led is a little bit hard to have time to work and launch projects and even like develop the collective when it comes to the legal status and, you know, like the funding and all those strategies. So I really wanted to work with people that are interested to support youth group, but I wasn't sure how to do that. So I reached out to my team and we discussed that everyone was open to the idea, but none of us had an opportunity managing an advisory board before. So what we did, Tanya and I, we reached out to a community leader. Her name is Rania Yunus, and she's just an amazing member of the community. Is always supporting everyone. She believes in youth groups, and she has been incredible support to BAM. And we reached out to her with the idea, and we said we're interested in recruiting members and advisory board to support us and help us. And we had a lot of like assumptions about advisory board, so we weren't sure how it will work. And when we set up a meeting with Rania and we had that call with her, she was like an eye-opener to us. She changed a lot of perspectives that we had about the board, and she gave us a way to structure the advisory board in a way where we're still making decisions and we are still part of implementing the projects as youth-led, and we're still engaging the people in our community. Rani recommended us to work with board members to divide them into 4 committees, and then basically based on the needs of the collective. We were taking her advice, and I believe this could be also a mentorship because these community leaders that are interested to support youth group, for example, have a lot of experiences and have passion to support you. So it's always important to go back and ask them, and there is nothing wrong about asking for feedback or asking for an advice from someone who is an expert when it comes to what you are planning to implement. And we made the decision, and we worked on the structure that Rania recommended to us, and it was an incredible experience and the best decision that we took to our collective. We are currently working with 11 advisory board members, very diverse. We have climate consultants and mental health consultants. We have people that are working in policy, artists and professionals from different industries supporting the collective. And we took them now as an opportunity for us to be mentored by them and by their experiences. So that's what we're doing. And also Gandhi is a great mentorship opportunity for us to just connect and learn from experiences that are from other collectives and from the mentors that are mentoring and offering the workshops. The way that we offer the mentorship that we get, we run programs. For example, one of the programs that we run is called Talents to Inspire. And what we did, we thought that there is a gap for young entrepreneurs and young artists when it comes to planning to launch their businesses, for example, or talking about their talents or promoting themselves. So what we do, we give them a platform and we connect them with professionals to be able to improve the skills that they have or find the support and the resources they need to speak openly about their skills and talents, and to also have a space. So when it comes to our in-person programming back before COVID, we used to give them tabling during our events to come and table and speak about their businesses, or we used to give them the stage to speak about the talents that they have or performing. We used to invite professionals to connect with them in the networking session. So we wanted that mentorship networking to be one-on-one, so they can learn more than just coming to a group and then ask a few questions.
Amazing, thank you both. And so touching on that, like, I'm wondering what we can offer as advice to other young people or students who are interested in collective arts work, but don't know where to start. And a kind of sub-question to that is, how do we think educational institutions can be more encouraging of collaborative and collective work? Or maybe how to get started with your collective work in spite of your institution. Florence, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think for educational institutions, or specifically the ones that I attended, Concordia University and OCAD, collective work has been most fruitful when there's, I guess, like a time and kind of unstructured space that I've been able to access. There's a lot of like equipment and tools and advice that's needed when you're starting to form your own collective. And I think, yeah, having access to mentorship is so important. Like, I think also, back to that question, that like one of the main people and kind of structures that happened a little bit before and at the same time as T-Base was the Diasporasian Futures workshops led by Jasmine Ngui and the P40 collective in general. Christy and Hanya were a part of that, as well as some other folks that ended up being part of our collective too. And so I guess, kind of learning how to, I think what's also been important for me has been learning how to grant write. Like, that is super like underrated and not spoken about enough, of what exactly is grant writing and how does it play into what you do. Like, if I'm like looking at my personal finances, I think grants support like 50% of what I do. And when I look at T-Base, I'd say almost the same thing. And so the many grant writing workshops I've attended throughout my education have been really helpful. And actually, when I was at Concordia, I was just lucky that every year, one of my profs had decided, I'm just going to share a little bit of how, like, my, I guess, personal practice and career and life has been like shaped by these things outside of school. And so they let us know like what professional, like what gallery representation looks like, what collective work looks like. They tell us what like having kids is like with you know, an art practice. And so there's just like so many things that I think could be made, could be done more often. And I think those conversations are maybe the most important thing that I've taken from art school. And at OCAD, there is like, I actually was a TA for many semesters for the professional practice courses. But it's difficult in how, obviously, it's like a curriculum made for many people and not individualized. So I think like taking advantage of going to the CAED and like going to career advisory like opportunities is actually, it could be a lot more fruitful than you think it, or you just don't know what you don't know. So it's great to just like go and take in what you can, and not all of it is going to be useful. I think like getting the skill of understanding and parsing through what is applicable to your situation is another thing that is very useful. And thinking of how just like some of my profs have told me like, oh yeah, I just bussed and waited tables for like 2 years until I just landed a teaching job. Like, that's not, you know, he was a white man, so I don't think that works for everybody. And yeah, having these conversations very like candidly, not to be afraid of asking, because most of the time people are, I would be at least very happy to let people know what was up.
Thanks, Florence. You covered a lot of important points that I wanted to mention. I think the advice that I usually give, it might sound easy, but it's not easy to apply, but I'm just going to say it from my experience. If you are planning or you have an idea or just to establish a collective and work with a group of people, just do it. Like, don't listen to people, because when you start your idea and when you start talk about it, a lot of people will criticize your work and will tell you you cannot do it. So you will need to be ready to hear to the criticism that you will basically hear when you start. And two, you have to also acknowledge the challenges, and you have to respect the challenges that will exist. I think it's important for us humans to understand that challenges are the way to success, and challenges are a great learning experience for us to learn and grow, and we have to accept them, because life is about challenges and life itself is a challenge, and we have to accept the challenge and just do our work, right? So again, like, if you have an idea and you are planning to work with people, this idea is not on a paper, get it done on a paper. If it's on a paper, get it done and start planning, set up deadlines, and people mostly open. Like, if you think that you have an individual idea, but you want to work with people, reach out to people, reach out to friends, reach out to classmates, reach out to us. We're happy to collaborate with you if you want to start something. That's something we do at BAM. Reach out to these groups and learn, but at the same time, try to establish what you're doing. And I'll give you an example about the challenges that we faced when we started the collective. Hanen and I, we were seeing the young youth, you're under 20, you're students, you cannot do it together. A lot of people again told us, you will not be able to make an impact. And we did make an impact. We proved these people wrong. You will have also challenges when it comes to organizing and planning and working together. When we were planning our first event, the 2019 election, we had a lot of challenges. For example, we had to postpone our event 2 days before. So we had to postpone for 75 people, which is a huge number, and working and accommodated people is a big thing. Two, we had to change the venue for a very simple reason, and they canceled on us. A lot of people canceled on us, including those who are performing and speaking at the event. But we did it. Like, we went for the event. It was a stressful time for sure, especially for me. It was like the first event that I'm organizing. I felt so stressed while organizing. But then when I received that call from the girl that attended the event and said, hey, I voted for the first time in my life, I knew we made an impact, and I wanted us to continue working together. So be ready and just set up plans and deadline. It's important to always put deadlines. And what Florence was mentioning about the grant writing and the financial literacy, those are important things to learn, but they come while you're working together. For example, when I joined the collective, I didn't know about governing model unless I studied that, and then I started to implement that. And then there are a lot of things that we're learning now about at Gandhi's workshop. We didn't know also before, right? So like, there are always opportunities for you to learn and implement these. And people have talents. And when we say the word talent, we don't mean only artistic talent. We have other talents. For example, I believe that I have a talent in connecting people. Maybe you have a talent in convincing someone to come to your event, or a talent in creative writing, a talent in offering a way, I don't know, a way of support. But people have talents. Just think about the talents that your idea is missing, and then reach out to people. And that's what Hani and I did. I came with the policy, the community work, and the advocacy, and Hani came with the artistic talent, the art, and bridging the gap using art. We brought it together, and hey, like, now we are operating multiple projects. We're launching national projects. We just launched in New York City. We're receiving a lot of community collaboration and support, and people reach out to us to collaborate with us. People come to us individually and collectively to work. So yeah, get it done. Reach out to us if you need any help or any support. We're always ready to help.
Thank you so much for all these generous answers. I think we're due for a little bit of a break. Maybe we'll do like a 5-minute break to digest and also write down all your questions. I see like a lot of great questions already came into the chat. We'll address them right after our break. It's 2:05 right now, so we'll meet at 2:10 back here. I'll just, I'll be around. I'll turn off my video for 4 to 5 minutes just to have an eye break. I'm so excited for the discussion. Hello. Okay, it's 2:12. How's everyone doing? Are we ready to resume? Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone's really generous answers. And we have 2 questions in the chat that that have been put forward. We can start with them, and then if you have any more questions, if anybody has any more questions, you can use the raise hand feature, or put it again in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on them. Okay.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody again for being here and for all the panelists. I feel the sort of buzzing of inspiration, and it's really wonderful, so thank you. Okay, first question, reading it out. It's from Tolene, and Tolene asks, I'm wondering about the artistic side of doing it together. What does working as a collective add to your artistic and curatorial thinking? Really good question, actually. So I'm not sure who would like to give it a go.
I'll pass it to Florence because I'm not an artist. I work with artists, but I guess Florence can add more to this question.
Sure, yeah. I find for me, I've come from a very academic and like I feel like I've been very like molded by that influence of like structure, rigor, theory, etc. And so for me, it's been very, very expansive in my thinking of like knowing what folks who've never been to school do, how more like community-centered work happens, what can be changed in institutions, but also just like ignoring that. And and I think a lot of what I used to do was so focused on like reacting to my environment because it was so I guess like very oppressive in many ways, from like, yeah, from the institutional side, from the faculty, from like peers. And so being in a collective that is kind of away from that, and people who have such different points of origin, I think just allows you to step away from having to be reactionary and instead like build something up from the ground. And for me, it's just been really wholesome in some ways. And I am mostly an artist, but from my like collaboration with Arezu Salamzadeh, like we've decided to form a curatorial collective, the Chinatown Biennial. And I think that's mostly just been like recognizing that these kind of names of what we do are just like one of the labels of limits, but we can, you know, we can do so much more, and that we also just want to focus more on like our communities, our friends, and what we see in the world. And I think when you form a collective, there is like this certain like I suppose legitimacy given to you, and that's why I like take advantage. I appropriate a lot of institutional lingo. That's why I called it the Chinatown Biennial. It's why I called my other collective with Matthias Eilach, the Institute of Institutional Critique. It's like something that can, you know, take advantage of funding. It can like help with just yeah, authority, legitimacy, and I think, you know, when people are often surprised that T-Base is mostly run by you know, youth, queer Asian youth that like may do things in a very haphazard way. And that's okay. Yeah, I've lost track of what the question was. Oh yeah, artistic impact on collectives. I think that might have answered it. Please let me know if there's like more details that you'd like.
I'll add that for Gendai, I'm an artist and my collaborator Marsya is a curator, but what working collectively has enabled us to do is kind of be both and neither as well. We're sort of between a curatorial and arts or artist and an arts advocacy organization, and being able to kind of move fluidly between and back and forth through these like different categories has really kind of opened possibilities for us to work in ways that's really experimental and has really like encouraged our work to be really responsive, I think.
Yeah, and as a curator, I only work in collaboration with artists now. I think ever since I started working within collectives. But another thing that really changed was like I started spending a lot more time with my artists and focusing and having this reflected in the budget also, just having carving out time for everyone to get to know each other. And it's not just kind of me and each of the artists, but also like as a cohort, which I find to be the most fun. And also I think it contributes to the development of like of an exhibition's ideas and the kind of questions that we want to ask. Wondering if Alex and Philip, do you have any things to add from your own work with collectives too?
I think for me, it's like an opportunity to really share your ideas. Like I was just saying this morning that like when I work alone, I get into a space where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, does this make sense? Is this just like really trite or like meaningless? But like in a collective, there's like almost this like support system. You're like, how do you think about this? Like, how can you make it better? So there's such a like value in having someone else to talk to so you're not alone. So I'm trying to do this more even in my own solo practice, to like talk to my friends about my work, to get their advice, to like get their feedback on it, and then do it in a mutual way. So even in my solo work now, I'm trying to think about like the collective support system, like exactly what Hanen said. It's like, how can we have that support system in everything we do to share our ideas so you're like just a little bit less alone, and then like share the opportunities with each other. It's like, if I can't do this thing, can I pass it on to someone else who can? So it becomes this like giant network, which hopefully means that we're all leveling up together.
Yeah, and like, no, I totally agree. I think there's so much value in collaboration. Also, like, I always like to say the fun thing about working in collectives is, and maybe I can speak a bit more about like how Hearth does this, but you know, I always say that it's like the Avengers of, like, not that Hearth is, but like collectives are in general. So it's like when I joined Hearth, it's like I brought all of the programming and administrative experience that, you know, comes with working at Xpace. Ben is a writer, so he's been able to help us a lot with like grant writing and stuff like that. Rowan brings a lot of experience in like graphic design and like coding. So, you know, to have those gaps be filled in by someone else, it's kind of also like a puzzle. So while learning from each other, we also take on different roles. So yeah, there's versatility when it comes to collectives. Yeah, Parker Hearth is the Avengers.
Amazing.
Yeah, also, I think like so much of what Gendai is trying to do is dismantle the mindset of competition and scarcity that our peers are, who instead of competing with, are who we should be collaborating with and support, because it's mutually beneficial to be part of a thriving community rather than trying to separate yourself from your community. And we found that that was just so contrary to so many of the educational, institutional, and professional experiences we had had prior.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think especially in like the general, I've been seeing more of like a general discourse about diasporic arts, especially in Asian communities, and working in a collective, I think allows for that conversation to be pushed further than if kind of like 10 different individual artists were making, you know, solo shows about their grandparents. I mean, it's very important. Yes, I love my grandmother too, but I think there's like so much commonality that's already happening, and that sometimes it also feels like there's a sort of like cyclical wheel that happens with it too. So I think that having these larger conversations and having things that we don't want to really talk about in public, but being able to talk amongst yourselves in community is so important to maybe like realizing when we're being either like tokenized or when we're being kind of pigeonholed into something. Yeah.
Thank you for your responses. And I see all of this engagement in the chat as well. So I'm just sort of like catching up with everything. The second question here asked by Tatiana is also a really interesting one. I'm really intrigued to see what you answer is, how does one come to join an existing artist collective, or how can one go about participating in one?
I can answer this question a little bit because we receive a lot of people like interest in joining our collective. We're again not only an artistic collective, we do a lot of community advocacy. So we receive calls from both sides. But I would say like to join an existing one, just like reach out and talk about the talent that you are planning to offer. Like what can you offer to this collective, and how would that help you also to gain the experiences and the skills that you want. For example, for our collective, we had a high school student, her name is Maggie, and she came to me and she said, I'm interested to join this collective and I have an idea. And and we didn't think that we wanted to do a magazine like before. We were mostly operating like workshops and programs and events, but we didn't think of, for example, establishing a magazine. So Maggie reached out to us and she came with an idea, but she wanted to join an existing collective because she thinks as a high school student, it's hard for her to form an entire collective and manage, especially when starting university. And we were open to the idea. So she came with an idea of starting a magazine, a virtual magazine to highlight the growth of young people. And to be honest, I was so excited just to see how that work will look like, because I've never met Maggie even in person. And we just chatted over the phone and we said, hey, like, let's give it a try. So she joined our team and she started to work collectively with us, but she also engaged youth from her school. So it was also engaging other people from the community. And we worked together on a magazine that was launched just last week. Check our Instagram. It's so beautiful. You will be so amazed by their artistic skills that they highlighted in the magazine. And we established the magazine. I expected, while working only Maggie with like 14 members of us, to receive like 5 to 7 submissions, but we received over 34 submissions. And so professionally, very diverse form of art. And Maggie is so happy also with the results. And because we did something together, so now we know how we can continue the work collectively. And we are hoping to apply for more funds. And we are currently working on the next phase of the next theme of the magazine. So always reach out with your ideas and always talk about them. And I'm pretty sure most of the collectives are open to have you and to collaborate with you even on your individual project.
Yeah, I'll also just share that Gendai has an open call up right now for an emerging collective that we're hoping to mentor to continue some of these conversations that we've started today. I'll put the link in the chat. I agree with Hanen to just like reach out to people whose work you admire. as like one of the more like established people on this panel, it's like you can never get enough of those emails. They're really lovely to receive, and definitely most people are like so just like pleased that other people are showing interest in their work. It's never like a bad thing. And also I'll share that Marsya and I didn't really know each other too well before we started Gendai together last year. She was just somebody who we were kind of like peripheral colleagues, but she was someone whose work and writing I admired. So I just reached out to her, and now we're very good friends, I think.
Ditto. It was like a distant crush.
Yeah, and you can kind of just start where you are, like start with your friends, start with people whose work you admire. There's no like wrong way to start getting involved.
Yeah, I would say that for many collectives, I think like it's onboarding new people and just like collaborating with people is built on trust. So if you, I mean, it's always best if you kind of, even if you don't know each other at first, that, you know, if they're a physical space, you can always go in, you can talk to them without like immediately going like, can I join? Or but just like getting to know each other and like making sure that your values are on the same line, or similarly. You don't have to like obviously like bow to the party line, but just like having just like showing up as well, like showing up for each other, I think is so important. And like obviously we can't do that as much in person anymore, but that used to be like the main way that people joined our collective. Just like you showed up for a Mahjong Monday, and we got to know you over several weeks, and now we're like, oh, cool. Like I get to know what you do personally, what you do outside of arts, but what you do inside arts. And also, you know, just being able to, yeah, to talk about things other than just the work, because I think that's what really sustains us and brings new ideas in. As well, well, I mean, now that we're online, I'd still say that it's like possible to show up, like, you know, just like you can casually react to people's stories. You can, you can like tag them when you're like promoting their stuff. You can like also just like show up to their workshops. A lot of online workshops, like this is a panel talk, but a lot of the online workshops are quite small these days. I'd say like, you know, 7 to 15 people, and you kind of get to know folks. And if not, like if you just want to send an email, I think that's always possible. But like starting with, you know, yourself, like you do this, you've been following this collective's work for a while because you are interested in this as well, and like really putting enough of yourself to kind of get away this anonymity. Because I think a lot of small collectives in particular are very, have been burnt a lot by kind of institutional collaborations that are sometimes like predatory for like funding, for tokenization, for, you know, having that one BIPOC collective in the neighborhood, or kind of, yeah, especially because we're mostly all youth, we are sometimes doing precarious work. And so it's very easy to kind of be, I guess, exploited or softly exploited in these situations. And so I think, yeah, being able to do things long term and being able to have a reciprocal relationship is really key in introducing yourself, but also just like continuing with that relationship.
On that note, we can follow up with the next question, which I think is slightly related to what you're talking about right now, Florence. Hania asks, what are the cons of the community arts / DIY / grassroots / collective sector? And is your collective trying to address these things? If so, how and what are you doing?
I can start answering that question. I think the number one that probably most of collectives agree is funding. Like they're for collective groups to other organizations, get a legal status. So there are a lot of obstacles when it comes to funding and operating projects. But most of the time, what we're trying to do, we're trying to establish more collaborations with community organizations, especially now because we don't have a registration status. And when you apply for over, I guess, 5K or 10K, most of the institutions or those who are funding you, including like the City of Toronto, they ask you to collaborate with an existing organization that have a legal status, whether a charity or a non-for-profit, to receive the funds on your behalf, and then you manage it. So it's a little bit tricky because you have to go through the process of meeting with the team, establishing a good relationship with them, and then you have to report everything. So it's like extra work for us to do, even though again, we're like, T-based, we operate at voluntarily pace, and sometimes whenever there is a way for us to pay from the funds that we receive, we pay the staff. But it's very challenging when it comes to collectives, and I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to get a legal status to be able to operate our projects and pay our staff, at least like hire again like the students through the summer internship. We're doing a lot of advocacy work about that, so we're trying to highlight that in the work that we're doing. And we are hoping to organize a talk about collectives. So if you're interested, check our social media platforms because we're going to post that. So we're hoping to highlight the gaps that we are facing as collectives. And I think this will also give us a chance to listen to other collectives and the need when it comes to funding. I love policy work. I'm very well connected to politicians, and I always like to remind them that there is more work to do. So I'm hoping to work on a policy, like take this as a policy and propose this to the City of Toronto, and also like some to the province, just to see if there is a way to expand funding or support us more when it comes to launching our projects, because I believe we are bridging gaps, we're making an impact, and we're doing a lot of work, and we deserve to be paid for that, and we deserve to be appreciated for the work that we're doing. So that's what our collective is working on.
And to add to that is like, I think that's what Gendai MA MBA is trying to do also. And we couldn't figure out how to do it and how to address these gaps ourselves. So we wanted to invite other collectives and create a think tank really to think about, these issues of sustainability, funding, what are the organizational methods that would be useful for collectives, and what are some of the ways to kind of unthink and unlearn them as well. So I think what is also maybe not a con, but like what we come in knowing, what you have to come in knowing is that collective work takes time. And for ideas to be shared and for conversations to go forward, it always takes time. So I think kind of acknowledging that at the start and being open to the building of relationship and trust is key, I think.
All right, and the last question that we have from Hania as well is, what are the biggest lessons you've learned that apply to your personal philosophy, doing collectives work, DIY work, grassroots work?
I feel like I learned to be less competitive. And just realizing that's not what it's about. Anyone else?
I think believing in the work that we're doing, because again, as we mentioned, like the challenges exist when working collectively, and I think sometimes you feel discouraged to continue the work that you're doing, and you start to question or have a doubt, and that's something normal. It's always normal, or even feel unproductive while doing the work. But I think that's something I learned where it's I'm not considering activity for unproductivity and normal, but I think it's always to take breakout time. That's something I do. Like I always try to whenever there is a need to stay away, even though I have a space and we build a trust and I can come to the space whenever I need. But I think it's also set up boundaries whenever you need your own space to step away a little bit, because it might sound working collectively, you have to stick to people and always work with people and just be around people. But take your time and take your personal space and always reflect on what you're doing. That's something learned, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy also to do that. But that's the one learning, and also again believing in the impact that we're doing. I personally think while working collectively, I was able to learn more about the work that I do. I started to believe even in talents. Like someone asked about the artistic, like what do you get when it comes to artistic talents? While working in a collective, when I started working for the collective, I always, whenever I was speaking at events, I remember events where I was speaking and I went to go, I'm not an artist. And I think I mentioned it today, like I still always mention this, and I'm not an artist. I didn't study art, like, but I love arts and I enjoy art. But my team always remind me of other talents, the talents that I said that are not artistic, or maybe they're considered artistic, like bridging gaps and bringing people together, and just making an impact is a talent. And I'm developing these talents, and I started to appreciate even art more and the art industry more, and that's why we're all working toward a better industry for everyone, specifically for artists during the pandemic. So yeah, like I guess my takeaway is believing in myself and learning how to say no, listening, and taking time and setting up boundaries. That's what I learned.
Yeah, I'd say many of those lessons are still there with me. The same as Hanan, like, yeah, boundaries, saying no or not now. And mostly I think like, because my collective work has taken me more to like curatorial, or just like a community lens, like I feel like I feel it's taught me a lot of like humility and like thinking of how collectives can best serve everyone together, and everyone else, and thinking of collective artwork as a kind of like gateway for others to also be thinking similarly, to join, or to kind of like share what they're thinking. And so it's been a lot of good listening. And one of the person that I used to collaborate with during my master's, Marsya, sometimes she would tell me that her best like skill is to not be noticed. That when you're a curator in kind of especially a space that might seem like not yours. She's white, and so there was always like this I guess like dance that she did of like being able to help and support, but also leave space for others. And I think that that's been something I've been also like learning how to do best. I don't enjoy the spotlight anyways, and I think that's also a thing I love about being in a collective. Like it's a little bit of anonymity, just a little bit, and in some different ways, like the opposite, it kind of broadcasts you in a different light. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. We have a question here from Akash. Hi, Akash. If this has ever happened to you, what happened when you can't personally deliver what you promised in a collection or collaboration? And how do you come to terms with resolving that?
The question is, what happened if we didn't deliver the work that we are planning to deliver, for example? That's a really good question, because like a lot of the times, you know, like when you plan, for example, for events and when you establish projects, not everything goes like the way that you expect it to go. But I think, as I mentioned earlier today, we have to familiarize ourselves with the challenges and just expect them anyway. And those challenges are the learning experiences for us, right? So I feel like working collectively helps you whenever like you're not like you wanted to deliver something and you're not able to deliver that for some reason. Obviously you will feel down and you'll be like, oh, I wasted my energy, especially grant writing. Whenever you're writing an application and then you get rejected, I think you have that feeling, which is I spend hours and times, and why then my work, you start to question a lot of questions. But I think working collectively helps you to get the motivation back, and that's the power that I see in the collective. Whenever I feel down or I feel like something went unexpected, my team always remind me that we're doing an impact. They always mention examples, and they always take something out of my shoulder whenever I feel stressed or unable to do it. So I think the power of having the unity of everyone around you is what supports you in these situations. So just learn, like take it as learning experience. And that's what I do. Like whenever I get rejected for a grant application, or most of the time funding comes late, so we have to pause and wait for our projects to be launched. I just take it as a learning opportunity, and I just take it as a way for us to take a break to just rest and connect and check with everyone. But yeah, like I think this is very normal, and it happens.
Yeah, for me, I think it's, I think we're all very good at knowing when we can't deliver something weeks in advance. We know it's like, I won't be able to do this. Like, I don't feel like doing this. And so I think when you know, the moment you know that is when you should let other people know that, like, I am struggling with this. I would like some help, or maybe I just need a little like 1 week extension, or maybe we could reduce the size of the project a little bit, or maybe this just makes sense. So there's like tons of options, I think, to doing that. And if it kind of ends up being a last minute thing, like I think when you look back on it, like, or when you are reflecting on it, I think not every project is a very high priority thing. Like, sure, there are, you know, grant deadlines, but grants roll around every 6 months. Or, you know, like, just to put into context, like, is this super important? Is someone told me, I don't remember who, but it was probably in this context actually, that there's no such thing as an art emergency. Like, no one will die. Was that you, Petrina? That no one's gonna be severely harmed if you have not done something. Most of the time, like, it's again just like looking at what gets delayed in the pandemic again and again for like institutions that have signed contracts with you. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you could technically sue them, but no, like, we're not going to do that. Like, yeah, so knowing, is this really as important as you've, you know, given yourself the pressure to do it? Yeah, being communicative as soon as you can. You know, if you're gonna tell someone like, oh, I didn't do this, but I can do it for this, and if I have this, blah, blah, blah. And so I think there's like ways of being open with one another.
And what I learned also is when you're sharing these roadblocks, you know, you're struggling with a task or something, by bringing it up, the collective members would like, okay, well, like, what is let's think through like what is making this challenging. Sometimes it's a capacity thing, which happens to everyone. But it's also like, oh, can we rethink it in a different way so that it's like, it's exciting, so that it's like, maybe the reason why we're having issues with this is because the ideology or the values are not aligned with what we're doing, and we just didn't realize it. So it's just kind of like gave a chance to think back and like, why are we really doing this? And is it an emergency? It's not. Yeah, so I think it's like kind of, it's actually productive to bring it up because you get to kind of rethink the reasons why you're doing it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I like to ask myself, at what cost? Like everything that we do, all the labor that we output, all the time that we spend on things, it all comes at a cost. And many things that we do are like absolutely worth the cost. But I think it's important to ask ourselves, at what cost are we doing the things that we do?
And like a tiny like silly tip, or it's not exactly silly, but one of the other reasons I love working collectively is that admin work and like hard tasks are always so much more fun and easy when you're co-working with people. And you know, it's different when you're on Zoom, but it still feels like the same. You're just like quietly all in the same Zoom room, but you're typing away, and there's some solidarity in that pain.
I think we should wrap up because we're a little bit over time. So I might just call it there. We had some really amazing questions, and thank you so much to our amazing panelists, everyone sharing your thoughts, your generosity. That's a big piece and how I like to think about collaboration, like about generosity and how we work together, our needs. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I want to maybe spend the time to maybe pop in all the links into the chat. This event is part of the CAD's broader Cultural Community Expo. So if you want to check out things that are happening tomorrow and Wednesday, there's an amazing lineup, including Xpace will be there tomorrow as part of our mega info session to like introduce you to a bunch of organizations that are based in the GTA. So you want to check that out. We have amazing workshops on like selling your work that's happening on Wednesday, and just thinking about like the business side of the practice. So please check that out as well. I want to reiterate Gendai's call. If you are an emerging collective and want to participate in their next MA MBA session, please join it. I should have probably said this at the beginning, but I'm also part of that as a collective participating. And honestly, it's been so wonderful to talk through questions that you always have around like structure, accountability, some of the more structural things that you may not have a chance to really think through. So I've really been enjoying those sessions. So highly recommend. And what else am I plugging? Oh, the Chinatown Biannual, biannual. I want to learn this. Chinatown Biannual call is open until the end of this week. So if you are interested in, doing some artwork and being part of that festival, please check that out. And have the link there. Is there anything I'm missing? I think most folks know Xpace and CAD as spaces to keep up with in terms of events and opportunities and exhibition. Well, Xpace for exhibitions. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Woo! Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.